Welcome to Midweek Talks, where we help you follow Jesus and answer your questions in the middle of personal, social, cultural, and political issues. I'm your host, Mark Ivy. We're delighted that you're here today. You may want to go ahead and share this because we're going to have a really interesting discussion today about city government. And we've got some really important guests with us today. Yade, you're with us today. And Dana, you're with us today. And you both are with the City of Hickory government. Welcome.
Thank you.
To Midweek Talks. Yade, let's start with you. Can you just kind of tell us what you do for the City of Hickory?
Sure. Well, my official title is Executive Assistant Manager. I work in the manager's office. I've been with them for almost 18 years. We actually work on economic development, legislative affairs, a variety of different things, but our job is to move everything forward that the City Council would like to have as policies and procedures. That's our job. And so we handle water and sewer, but the manager's office actually makes sure that all of council's directives are carried through.
We're going to talk about some of that
Sure.
in a minute. Okay, Dana, let's talk to you for a moment. You're pretty involved in some of the communication in the City of Hickory. What does that exactly mean?
Yeah, pretty much all the communication in the City of Hickory. I'm the Communications and Marketing Manager for the city, and I am the person who oversees a team of people that oversees our marketing tools, our communication tools, like our website, our social media channels, anything that the city manager's office wants to put out or that messages are coming out from our council meetings. That it comes through my office. We write our press releases that go to the media, so we are the media liaison. We handle crisis communications, and we work with all the departments on anything that goes out from the city. So that's primarily my department.
So let me ask you guys a question as we get started today, because sometimes in a city, there's a misunderstanding of government. And we're actually seeing this around the country right now. It's not just local governments, local government, regional government, statewide government, and of course the federal government. And there can be a misunderstanding about the roles of government, first of all, how to communicate with government, and then from your perspective and from my observations, it seems sometimes that if individuals are frustrated. Have you ever met anybody frustrated, by the way, with
Never.
with cities? Yeah, okay, never, right? Okay, frustrated with government. That sometimes there's an inability for those individuals to properly communicate, and I'm just saying this to those of you who are listening because there's a right way to communicate with governmental leaders, and there's a not right way to communicate with governmental leaders. So let's just talk about that before we talk specifics. Let's just talk about how to communicate concerns, frustrations, issues. I know that you have a Facebook page and things, but sometimes social media may not be the best way to communicate. And what would be the reason for that? Everybody thinks that they can communicate on social media, which I say to those listening, I say, like, that's probably your least effective way to communicate. But what would be some of the challenges with that?
You know, you bring up a good point. I think social media is a great communication tool, and people can use it for good purposes. We do share a lot of information through our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram accounts, and we want people to connect that way because we know that you can get events there, you can get good information there. We tweet our entire city council meeting every other Tuesday night, the first and third Tuesday of the month. So if you can't make it to a meeting, you can watch it on Twitter, or you at least know what's going on Twitter. But if you want to communicate with the government, city officials, city manager's office, department heads, departments, it's best to either come to a meeting, and we have 2 of them a month typically, the first and third Tuesday of the month at City Hall, and that's at 7 p.m. They usually last roughly an hour. It just depends on the topic, sometimes 30 minutes, sometimes 2 hours. It just depends. But we also ask you to communicate directly with your council or with your mayor or your commissioners, or contact a department head or the city manager's office, because we're all available. We all have email addresses. We all have phone numbers. We welcome communication. We want people to contact us because I don't think there's anything better than just good old human-to-human communication on the phone or via an email. That way we can actually resolve a problem probably quicker. We have action centers, which is on our website, and you can, we were talking earlier about you can say that you found a pothole somewhere, or there's unfortunately a dead animal on the road and we need to have that taken care of. There's things like that that you can address through the proper channels. I think those are the ways that you can communicate probably quicker. We don't monitor those social media channels 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we're not going to get into a big long discussion back and forth on social media. We were going to ask you to come into the office.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because if you look at some social media feeds, there's a lot of discussion, and that's in quotes, that really doesn't solve an issue.
Yeah.
And honestly, if somebody wants to communicate about something, social media may not be the best way to do it, because the right people may not see the information. And so going directly to somebody would certainly be important.
Yeah. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so you mentioned earlier, like, who do you contact about certain things? Well, sometimes when you make that phone call, you might find out that the road that you're talking about that might have the pothole might actually not be in the city limits. Yeah. But if that happens, once you contact the city official, they might be able to contact the state who actually maintains it, let them know so they can make sure that it's logged in some kind of area where they can follow back up with it. So I think it's important that people are aware who to contact, when to contact them, and how accessible they are. And we try to make sure that if you call our general number, that there's always someone there to answer the call and get you directed to the right person.
Yeah. You bring up a good point in general about relationships, whether they are family relationships or business relationships, church relationships, governmental relationships. Go directly to the person. Don't do the side trip around through 3 or 4 different people. And this is the reason why particularly government offices are divided into certain categories, so you know specifically who to go to. So those of you who are listening, go directly to the person that you want to communicate with.
Yeah.
So,
and honestly, if they come to one of us and it's not the right department, I don't want anybody to be afraid to contact the government, because we can get you to the right people. We do that all the time. I get calls a lot for things that aren't in my area, and I will direct it to the right person. At least you're going to get somebody that can help you get there the right way and faster.
So let's talk Yade for a minute. As I'm standing on the outside, or somebody else is looking in at the city of Hickory, I see a lot going on. I see a lot happening. What exactly is taking place right now? What projects, big projects, are happening right now in the city of Hickory?
Well, we're very fortunate, and you bring up a good point. So there is a lot going on, but this has been years in the making. So a few years ago, City Council had started working with some community groups and realized we were losing a lot of population and a lot of jobs. So what were we going to do about that? The city needed to grow. Because we needed to move the needle, we actually did some visits to some other cities that had had similar situations. Greenville, South Carolina was one, Chattanooga, Tennessee was another one, Durham, North Carolina, and Charlotte, North Carolina. They all had different components of different things that we wanted to take a look at. The City Council then started working with over 500 community groups, and I think it's important that people know that, because getting input from the community, what the community wants to see in the growth, is just as important as what the leaders want to see. And so being able to get some of that, putting it into a plan. In 2014, we did a bond referendum for $40 million to be able to initiate these projects. And so what you're seeing now is some of those. There's the City Walk project, which is a 10-foot multi-purpose pathway that starts at Lenore University, goes through our downtown, and then it eventually connects over to another walk, which is on Old Lenore Road. That one actually connects over to another additional multi-purpose pathway called River Walk, which is at our waterfront. One of the biggest things that we heard during those group meetings was no one has access to the waterfront unless you live there. And so how can we get access to the waterfront? And because Hickory is fortunate enough where its location is, we were able to do that. And then from that standpoint, there were some other additional projects that have kind of moved forward, and with some wonderful opportunities of grants, we were able to extend that $40 million, which was originally about 5 miles, to a 10-mile multi-purpose pathway trail, and it's close to $90 million in investment for infrastructure. And so we've been really pleased with the progress that we've been seeing. you're seeing a lot of construction going on. Along the way, we've been seeing a lot of development economically, but also on a residential side. The Trivium Corporate Center is it's actually an economic development park that we are doing in partnership with Catawba County, and it's 270 acres. But because we have done such a wonderful job with them in partnership, we have now 6 tenants. I think we got our 6th one.
So let's answer that, because people drive by this Trivium Center and they're like,
they don't know what it is.
is that a store? Is it a mall?
Yeah.
What is it? So what exactly is there?
It's actually an advanced manufacturing business park. It actually creates jobs. There's hundreds of jobs that we've been able to create, more than just the construction jobs of building everything that's out there, but also the jobs that will be there. One of them is Corning. It's actually finished, I think, but it's one of the ones that's right there off of the Startown Road side. On the other side, there will be an actual medical facility called ITM. We've got another one that's just been recently announced called Gusner. There's a lot of wonderful things that it's going to be creating there. It's just a mile from the Workforce Solutions Center at CVCC, so someone can, in essence, get some training and then go to work. So that's what the bonds are all about.
Something I was going to add real quick to that, to Trivium, that I think people don't know, that we know. When ITM was looking, they're a German company, and I think this is their first North American facility. And they had opportunity to look at different places, and they wanted to be close to an airport because of the product that it's a pharmaceutical type product, needs to be transported quickly. So they looked at Trivium, but also what sold them is we have these amazing mountain bike trails. And so people wonder sometimes, what does quality of life factor, how does that factor in? Well, the person that was going to be heading up that facility came and she found out that we had these mountain bike trails. She was like, we need to be in Hickory. And so those pieces are a part of the puzzle. It's not just having land and water, which is important. I mean, that's huge pieces for corporations. But it's also having CVCC's Workforce Solutions Complex and having that training facility right there to help train people to go into the workforce, and then also having quality of life, good quality of life. So I think that's really important for these companies.
And I think the other thing we've seen, and in fact one of them is actually 2 of them are right in our downtown, is housing. So we're seeing a lot of
I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah, so some apartment complexes are going up right in the downtown, which we haven't seen before. And so they're right along the trail. And so those trails run right past their location, and that was by design because the developers wanted to be along that corridor so that they could get people to restaurants, to the retail shops that are close by, to other amenities. There's, the library is not very far, the hospital is just a couple blocks away. So realizing that they're there at those variety of different resources and items that they wanted to be at, and then be able to live there. So that's brought a lot of growth, and we've been very excited to see that coming.
So is that trail, is that just a walking trail? Is it a bike trail?
Yeah, so it's a biking trail, but it's also, we call it a multi-purpose because you can bike, you can walk, you can run, and so certainly people can use that however they would like. We tried to make sure that it's pretty well lit. If you've ever gone down at nighttime, you will see there's a lot of lighting along through there. Because one of the biggest things that we heard was people wanted to feel that safe and security as they're using the trails.
Now, how much of that is completed right now, the trail?
Well, so we just started the construction on some of it even last year. So, it's still in progress, but a lot more construction is along the way. Some of the other trails that have just started to finish up the design, like our historic Ridgeview Walk, and of course our where the Old Lenore Walk is. Will be finishing up soon, and then we actually have what's called the Aviation Walk, which actually goes over to our airport. That one is actually being bid right now for construction. So all of that will start construction sometime this year, if not by the end of the year, into next year.
So go ahead.
I would say City Walk, which is the one I think a lot of people have heard of, City Walk and River Walk. City Walk is not far from completion. We're fortunate that it's nearing summer, probably will be that one, but people are already on it, even though we haven't officially grand opened it. People you see out there all the time walking on it and using it, so we're excited to see that happening. One goal of that also was to connect the Lenore Rhine students to the downtown, and they can walk or ride a bike down. Before, there really wasn't great access unless you had a car, so now they can walk the path the whole way down to downtown, to Union Square. And then the Riverwalk construction has already begun, and the on-land portion is really good. It's doing really well, but we can't fully open it or let people use it because we're going to have to block it again, because we're going to do some renovations at that park with some private money from a family in Hickory, the Lackeys, and then we're going to have an on-water portion. So that will be starting, I think, probably
The on-water portion is actually under construction right now. It should be finished up at the end of 2022. But the on-land portion that she was talking about should be finished up this summer. And then the public-private partnership that's on the end where Geithner Park is currently, that one should hopefully be starting up very soon. And I would imagine it's probably going to be maybe like a year or two for it to finish. But it is a private project.
We're excited about that one too, because that's a private family who came to the city and wanted to do something in partnership. So it's wonderful when we have businesses, families, people that want to partner with government, and we can do the infrastructure side and those type of pieces where they can then help to invest in other portions of it. And so that park is going to look completely different when it's done, and I think the community is really going to love it. There'll be some outdoor seating areas and some docks and some really nice things. We do have some pictures on our website. You can go to craftinghickory.com for any of these details. We have all of this online.
So the projects that are planned right now, what's the completion date of what's right now?
It usually takes about close to 2 years to finish most of these. So depending on the time that they start, because like we redid our downtown, and that one took a little over a year, and that one is completed. But the city walk goes right beside of that. So that one still, as she mentioned earlier, is still currently under construction, but it should finish up this summer. So depending on when they start, for those that might start, let's say this fall, then you can anticipate probably about 2 years before it gets finished up. It just depends on the weather and things that are going on.
Let's talk for a minute about infrastructure. So let's say there's $50 million available for change in a city, and $25 million goes under the street, okay? And people don't understand why that even has to happen. The businesses are challenged because the streets are dug up, the sidewalks aren't accessible, et cetera, et cetera. Can you help individuals understand when in trying to redesign a city, even first of all, what the term infrastructure actually means, okay? Because that's like, okay, we hear that term thrown around a lot, even among the federal government. And it's like people's eyes glass over.
We say it a lot.
Explain that so people can understand what's going on there.
And I think it really depends on what you're talking about, because there's bridge infrastructure that someone might be talking about. With roads, a lot of times, so for example, when we redid our downtown, we did have to take up some of the infrastructure that was underneath, because water and sewer can have pipes that have been there for years and years that might need to be replaced. If you're redoing and you're resurfacing an area, you might as well go ahead and upgrade whatever's underneath. If you're going to be supplying more because you've got more people moving into the area or more development, you may need to increase how much supply is through there. So those pipes may need to increase and get larger. And so a lot of times those kind of things get dug up. They may take a little bit longer because there needs to be some replacements done, and then everything gets smoothed back out. They put in new curb, they put in new sidewalk, there's some additional lighting that goes in. Sometimes there's conduit put in for, when we also talk about infrastructure, we also consider fiber as it's going down through the area, because that's, we've all seen how important that is. So a lot of that is in that word infrastructure. But for us, for the city of Hickory, because we do supply water and sewer, but also maintain streets, when we say infrastructure, a lot of times that's what we mean.
So when X amount of dollars is put under the road, people need to understand that, say, well, this should have gone into a building. You can't put that into a building if there's not the support system for water, electric, fiber, sewer, and all that kind of stuff. And that's the reason why those vast amounts of money need to be spent underneath, digging streets up, redoing that, then paving it back to where it was before, even if there wasn't a change really in the visible side of a building.
A lot of things that we, from a communications perspective, talk about people don't see all the behind the scenes like you just
Right,
said.
yeah.
So when we're communicating, roads are going to be torn up, especially with these projects. We've had a lot of road closures, a lot of things being torn up, and then people think we're leaving the roads like they are.
Right,
We're
yeah,
not.
okay.
We're repaving as we go, but you don't want to repave until you're done.
Sure.
So you're going to ride on some bumpy roads for a little bit. You may have a road closure here and there to make sure those things happen. Bridges have to be reinforced and taken care of, so roads have to be closed to make that happen. So it's our job in communications to make sure that information gets out to the public. That's where social media is a big tool for us. We put those on Facebook and Twitter, and people can connect to see those things happening in the city. We also, with downtown especially, we had a lot of construction happening in a small space, I would say a couple blocks. And so communicating with businesses, making sure that they are aware and making sure they know when jackhammers are going to be happening. So there's a ton of communication going on behind the scenes, whether it be through my office or through our business development office or through our manager's office, with individuals, with businesses, with all kinds of parties in the city. And then also wanted to mention part of infrastructure is code and enforcing the code and enforcing our fire department. That's a huge piece of what they do, is making sure that when a new business is coming into a city, that it meets code. So that's a sprinkler system, that's all the lighting, electrical, things like that. So they have to inspect that. And sometimes I don't think people fully understand those aren't all local level mandates, those are also state and federal mandates. So we have to make sure that those businesses are functioning at the code now. Then say somebody was in there for 20 years, left that, now a new occupant's coming in, our departments have to make sure that that's up to code.
Explain to somebody that doesn't understand the concept of a bond.
So a bond is actually a general obligation bond, and it's something that has to be done through voting. So when council decides that they want to, or a local government decides that they want to try to pass a bond, or a school board, we were talking about this earlier today, they have to put it into a ballot. And so the voters come out and make that decision based on the information they're given. One of the things that we did when we did the bond in 2014 was there's a certain time period where we, the city, could talk about what this would do. Then at a certain point, by statute, you have to stop talking about it and allow the opportunity for the community to discuss. And so during that time period, I was telling Dana, and within a 2-week period, we did some 27 presentations to different civic groups, different organizations, trying to get that communication out. We did a video that was 14 minutes to try to make sure we explained what everything was going to be, because the amount of increase for the property taxes, which is where that bond comes from. Yeah, so whatever that amount is, that money goes back to repay the money for those bonds. We have a 7 to 10 year time frame to be able to pay that back. So if you're talking about the full 40 million, then we have that 7 to 10 year time period. So we're very limited in how long this stuff can last, but also it kind of keeps us accountable for trying to make sure that everything is completed within a certain budget and certain time frame.
So once this is the reason the communication is important on the bond, because people have to vote on it.
Right.
Is it going to be beneficial to them, to the city, even though the taxes are going to go up? So after that 7 to 10 year time period, if somebody's like, I'm listening to this, I'm listening right now, and I'm saying, okay, in 7 to 10 years, do my taxes go back down after we've paid for this?
Well,
or is that a long-term payment back, not just in the 7 to 10 years?
Well, and so it all depends on the time frame of when things got completed, right? So it just kind of depends. Hopefully it won't be that long of a time period, and certainly with growth, that's what we all hope for, and I think that's what the council would hope for as well. But it's something that we couldn't determine at this time.
I think the goal in doing all these projects, a lot of people say, oh, well, you're just putting a nice sidewalk in, or why couldn't you pave our roads with that? That's one of the biggest questions I think we have, fix the potholes or something like that. So when you receive a bond, it's delegated to a specific thing. You cannot change that.
Right. It's designated money.
It's designated money. It is specifically what they voted on, and so that's what it's being used for. So we like to make sure people do understand that, yes, your taxes will pay for it. That's why you vote on it. But 2, we can't go use it for something else. It is designated for that. The second part is when you receive grant money, that's not tax dollars.
Right.
So
Sure.
the 50 million on top of the 40 was money given to the
Sure.
city. So that we were able to leverage that 40 million to be able to get 50 more
Okay.
million.
People need to know that.
They do.
Okay, because one thing creates something else that could potentially create something else. And what I'm thinking here is the ultimate goal is to bring more people into the city of Hickory
Absolutely.
Exactly.
so that there's a larger group of individuals that are paying taxes in the
Yes.
city of Hickory,
Yes.
so that taxes don't have to go up as often as
Right.
maybe they would
100%.
Yeah.
if people are moving out versus if people are moving in.
Yep.
That's a huge piece of our job now too. What I didn't mention in my job portion is business development. I do marketing for business development for the city. And when you think of companies with business development, it's sales and things like that. What
Right.
we're doing is actually trying to recruit people to live here, work here, visit here, and build businesses here. So we have an Office of Business Development that our city manager, Warren Wood, created probably 3 years ago now.
Maybe it's probably closer to
4?
5 now.
Oh, 5. Wow.
Yeah.
Time goes fast.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been that long that we've been a part, and it's planning and development. It's Office of Communication, our transportation, our GIS, and our business services. And we all work together, and Yade and our assistant city manager, Rick Beasley, we're all part of that. And so we work together, and the goal is exactly what you said. We need to bring more people to this city, not just for the bond purpose.
Sure.
I mean, that's why we created that.
Right.
We want to drive more people, quality of life, all those things I mentioned earlier as to why we have bike trails and things like that. But also so that we can have a transportation insight company who was run down. I don't know if you remember years ago, Lyerly
Yeah.
Mill was run down, Holler Mill, Moretz Mill. All those mills looked terrible, and that whole area was not great. But we were able to put infrastructure in place with the roadways. They were able to work with even our brownfield money, which is through planning and development. We were able to pay for some research to make sure that the ground was good, the buildings could
Right,
be
yeah.
redeveloped. And look what they are now. And Transportation Insight is right there off the City Walk. They know that they have employees that would love to just hop on the City Walk at the end of the night, walk to downtown. That company could have gone to Charlotte. They decided to stay in Hickory because
Sure.
of the things we were investing in. So that's one portion of it. 2, we want people to move here because of property taxes, of course. That does pay your general fund balance
Sure.
so that you can improve your streets, you can have great water, fire, police, all those services that cities do provide. We don't have to provide parks or libraries. I don't know if a lot of people know
Right,
that.
yeah. No.
And so we have 2 libraries and I think 26 parks, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think so.
We have a lot of parks. They're beautiful, and we have to maintain them, so you have to have people and staff to do that. So there's a lot of layers, and we offer a neighborhood college class, I guess you could call it, Hickory 101 or neighborhood college every other year for citizens to come be a part of, to learn this information. Because we say we're doing a little mini neighborhood college right now, just
Yeah.
giving information. This is what we do so people can understand when you move into a city, what is offered, who those people are, how you connect with them, and then you get to know them, like you said, on a one-on-one level, and you start to really appreciate and understand government at a different perspective, I think, than just they make all the decisions and I have to live
I
with
get
it.
no say and I got to live with it.
Yeah,
right?
I have to live with
right,
it.
Yeah.
I just pay taxes and that's it.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
the money goes to really important investments. Part of why you want your cities to grow is because if they don't grow, they die.
Right.
And you don't want that to happen. Charlotte, we'll use Charlotte as a great example. It has just grown like immensely.
Yes.
I mean, you look at Mooresville, you look at Huntersville, you look at all these areas that just keep expanding, even to Waxhaw and Matthews and those places, Rock Hill, all the
Even
way out.
Asheville.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the way out. And so our Economic Development Corporation Executive Director, Scott Millar, says it really well. It's like a clock. And you look at noon all the way around. And if you look at Charlotte as that clock, this whole portion from noon until 9 p.m. has really developed. Well, we're the 9 to 12 is Catawba County and up into our metro area. When I say metro area, that is Hickory, Lenore, and Morganton. We are lumped together as a metro area. We have to develop. We have to be able to pull some of that traffic. Cheryl's Ford's already doing that in that area. You're
Yes,
starting to
they
see a
are,
lot of development there.
Just through there the other day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
tons of things growing up through Cheryl's Ford. And you're starting to see that Charlotte traffic moving closer to Cheryl's Ford. Newton, right here, 16 is being expanded. And once that happens, that opens up that gateway of people to flood back and forth from Charlotte to here and here to Charlotte. We have some numbers that we just heard last week that I think it was like 67, or maybe a little up, but 6,700 people are traveling from.
I wanted to ask you about this,
Yeah.
if you had any numbers
Yeah.
about that.
Yes,
okay.
but, I think it was
Yeah.
6793, if I'm not mistaken, is traveling from,
0.3.
or 6793.
Yeah, yeah. 0.3. Okay, you're good. Okay, yeah.
Don't quote me on that. Leaving here and going to Mecklenburg County daily. That's the migration.
Driving back and forth,
Yep.
or commuting.
Living here,
Yep.
driving to
Okay.
the
Yep.
Mecklenburg County. We also have that same amount from Caldwell County coming into Catawba County.
Mm.
So we might lose traffic, but we're also gaining it because Hickory is the hub of the metro area.
Right.
As we grow, we hope Caldwell and Burke County grow with us.
Mm.
As Sherrills Ford and Newton grow, we all grow together. We
Yeah.
want to make sure that Catawba County as a whole is growing because we don't want to be left behind.
Yeah.
With this mass that's growing in Charlotte,
Mhm.
a lot of what I do is trying to recruit from there up here. So we're trying to say our cost of living is lower. Your commute to work is lower. You can still be an hour from Charlotte, an hour from Asheville, an hour from Winston.
Mhm.
We have a great site called myhky.com. It's a 360-degree interactive tour of the metro area. And so for people that don't live here, you don't have to necessarily come here to see what we have. You can just go to that site and check it out and say, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. I didn't know they had hiking. I didn't know they had, breweries. I didn't know they had these things. I didn't know they had all these restaurants. I didn't know they had that, to coffee shops. And we have a few key things on there so that we know people like certain things can come and see that. And then they'll go, oh, we want to come to Hickory. We want to visit our area. And when we say Hickory, we do look at it as a metro area.
Sure.
We sell ourselves as a Hickory metro, which includes Caldwell and Burke and Alexander and Catawba counties, of course.
Yeah.
So that's probably the bigger perspective, is getting people to come here.
So one of the challenges that has been happening for people trying to move in here is housing.
Mm-hmm.
So what's happening right now specifically? I know we have the downtown apartments that are being built.
Yeah.
Is there a plan for that? What's the forward movement with housing in Catawba County?
Well, certainly we are always open for developers to come in and talk with our planning officials about opportunities. We've been seeing, even on smaller scales, some developers doing a few homes in certain areas where there's just an opportunity for maybe 5 new houses.
Yeah.
And one thing we've been seeing too is those houses get bought quickly.
Yes.
Because there's such a need for that inventory. And so the more opportunities that there are out there for people to be able to come in and do that, the better. And so we try to make sure that we meet with them promptly so that they can get through the process for what they need. We let them know what's going to be required on planning and zoning side, but also water and sewer. We try to make sure that all of our departments have gotten the services that they need to be able to take care of the people that will be moving there. It's in some areas might be a little bit bigger. If someone's bought a couple of hundred tracts of land, they might consider doing something even bigger. Certainly we want to encourage that growth because we certainly need it. I think it's a national problem anyway, but
Sure.
we're seeing it for sure here in the Hickory area. So we highly encourage the multi-family, but also the single-family homes.
We'd love to see more developers taking a look at Hickory to develop single-family homes. We do have townhomes and apartments, like Yadi was saying, and we've had a lot of that growth in the past year. And again, I think a lot of that is contingent on the projects that we've been doing and the investments that we've been spending into the city. But we do see the need for homes are on the market, and they're gone so fast.
Yes. At premium price.
At premium prices. And that right now, I think, with COVID and all the things that have happened, I think a lot of things have just shifted.
Yeah.
Everybody focuses on their home.
Right.
There's been, fortunately for the city, a terrible pandemic, of course, for everybody. But fortunately for the city, we were able to get these projects knocked out even quicker because of that. Like our downtown, we were able to not impede the businesses as much because of that traffic staying at home more. That part helped us. But then you see the home market just shift completely right now, and we're seeing more people wanting to move here, and we're hoping we can get the attention of more developers that can come here and say, okay, Hickory's a hot market, and they do have land available for us to purchase and develop and sell single-family homes, because there is a definite need in our area for that.
So when we're talking about the metro area, of course we're talking Hickory, Newton, Conover, and then the larger area of Catawba County, Alexander County, Burke County,
Yes.
Caldwell County.
Yes.
Okay. And then the cities that are within those counties. Do cities, as far as development goes, ever collaborate together to say, okay, this is the whole area here. It's not just the city, but what do we do together to make this whole metro area better? Or are cities kind of doing their own thing, or are they collaborating together?
It's probably a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, our boss, or my boss Rick Beasley, our assistant city manager, that's a huge goal of his, is to work with Lenore and Morganton, with Hickory, and to say, you know, what's good for us is good for you, and vice versa. You know,
Right, yeah.
we our numbers nationally are shown as an MSA, and that includes those two cities with us. So we either help each other or we pull each other down.
Yeah, and show again an MSA?
MSA, Metropolitan Statistical Area.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that when you say
Okay.
the Hickory Metro,
Yeah,
that means those three
Okay.
areas
Yeah.
together. Nationally, so we either help or we hurt each other, whether it be education, or whether it be in the housing market, or whether it be economically, jobs. We're looked at as that MSA. So one area could be flourishing where the other one's pulling it down.
right, yeah.
So that's a give and take. It's hard at times because sometimes you need to sell yourself separately when you're flourishing.
Sure.
But you also want to make sure that your metro area is working together. So we have been talking with the other cities to make sure that we are, you know, when I say other cities, Catawba County always works, I think, together from a county perspective. They meet. I mean, you can talk to this. 'Cause you're in
Yeah,
that.
so we actually have a variety of different groups that we do. So there's the Catawba County group of cities that meet and discuss a variety of different things strategically. And there's different partnerships that spur because of that. But then there's also the metro area that you mentioned before, and our Western Piedmont Council of Government.
Yep.
They actually facilitate a lot of that discussion, whether it's, you know, hey, transportation-wise, these roads on the state are going to be planned for this year to be expanded, or this kind of road work's going to be done. Those kind of planning discussions happen in a 4-county area. But then also just in general, you know, what's going on in your area, in your community, in your city. So a variety of different discussions happen, and a lot of that is spurred because the Western Piedmont Council of Government helps to plug everybody in and get that information shared.
Can you explain the term sustainable development in terms of what cities are doing currently and what they feel that they need to do in the future? In making sure, first of all, not just economically, environmentally, and because when I've heard that term in the past, it becomes a controversial term. So can you speak into that just a little bit?
So I think anytime whenever we're doing any kind of development, mostly with economic development, I think it's to make sure that it's something that's going to last for a very long time, and which, you know, is what you're talking about. We try to consider things in the next 5 to 10 years. We were talking earlier how our city council actually met with staff last week to do some strategic planning for the next 5 to 10 years. I think anything that you're doing, you have to consider what that ramification is going to be, because you want to continue to see how the city can flourish over the next few years. You want to encourage the growth, but you want to encourage the opportunities that will be coming into the area, because ultimately we want it to be wonderful for the citizens that are here, but also for the visitors, for the newcomers, anybody that might be in the area, even regionally, just visiting. We want that to be something that's there for a very long time. And part of what we've talked about, even with some of our bond projects, is some of those things are those moments where you visit that location and it just takes your breath away, because it's such an amazing experience in a good way. And certainly we want that. We think that's the kind of stuff that will last for a very long time.
I know this is public knowledge, but the budget for the city of Hickory, off the top of your head, do you remember what that is?
The total?
I don't remember the total number.
And some people will look at that number and say, wow, that's a multiple millions of dollars
Yeah.
of money, they're saying. But they're not thinking about roads, they're not thinking about maybe police department, fire department,
Right.
city government, and all of the stuff that is required, and the management of it.
Right.
I was thinking about city managers in general, and what they're responsible for.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And these guys need degrees in finance, money, communication.
Yeah. Our city manager was our CFO previously,
Yeah.
and then came back, and now he's our city manager. He was our CFO and assistant city manager, but public administration and just
Yeah.
understanding people and what being a public servant is. I mean, because that's what we are as public servants, and that doesn't mean that we don't make decisions. We
Sure.
make decisions for the
Yeah.
public. The elected officials are the ones that have been elected. We've been hired by our city manager. We have a council manager form of government. Not everybody has that. That means that we have a council, a city council, and a mayor who then hires our city manager,
Right.
and then the city manager can hire and fire staff.
Okay.
Bigger cities like New York, they don't have that structure. They have a strong mayor. So the mayor is the person that makes the decisions. So you'll see different forms of government in different locations. But yes, it's a lot, and we have a lot. We have an airport. Not all cities have an airport. We have a regional airport. Now, granted, that doesn't mean at this time that public transportation.
Yeah,
is
let's talk
happening.
about that. So is there
Yes.
any thinking about, okay, because I know I can drive to Charlotte in 40 minutes and get on a flight there versus taking one from here
Yeah.
somewhere else. Is there any thinking with that? Because I know the profitability of a commercial airline here maybe is not what they would want it to be. So what's the thinking? Because I know a lot of private planes are there, right?
Yeah, yeah, and we would like to have a commercial service. Certainly right now we're making some changes to be able to open up that opportunity. You have to have a certain length of a runway
Sure.
to be able to accommodate for larger jets and planes to be able to be there. So we are making those changes, and we have had commercial service before,
Yes.
and so certainly we would welcome them back anytime. And so I know our staff's been working pretty hard with our airport director to try to encourage that. So yeah, we would love that.
Yeah.
That would be great.
The other thing I think people don't know too is we sell gas at the airport for jets to come in. And so
Right, okay.
that is an opportunity for the city to make money is through that as well at our airport. And so we do have companies, individuals who actually rent the hangars and have their jets there. When you have corporations, you tend to have a jet
Sure.
for the executives, and they fly in and out of our airport. We have a lot of the teams, Appalachian groups like that,
Okay.
that fly in and out with their teams. So it's our airport manager's been there, I don't know, 30 some years. He
Yeah.
Okay.
loves,
Yeah.
And so we have
Yeah.
really good, strong people in our departments too who've been there a really long time. And so that's wonderful to have that knowledge base of understanding. But also we have new people coming in with fresh ideas all the time too to the city. So I think we have a nice mix of people, but we have, like you said, a lot of different departments that have to be managed under that umbrella. Our budget's actually going to be coming out here in the next month, so
Yeah.
you can find the numbers and all the details,
Yeah.
online. But that's not a small process.
No,
That's a
it's
lot.
not.
Every department has to go through that process roughly at least 6 months in advance.
Yes.
Where we're sitting down with our management team and our finance team and going through our numbers and diligently going through those numbers every year. It's not something we just submit every year and it gets approved. We go through line by line and make sure those things are correct, capital expenses are correct.
Yeah.
When you talk about infrastructure, there's a lot of capital projects, whether it be with public services, our fire department. Those trucks are not inexpensive when you run
No.
a large ladder truck.
Yeah.
In our police departments, staffing wise, making sure that's always staffed appropriately. So there's so much information that goes into that to build that bigger budget. And we are very transparent with that, so citizens can look at
Sure.
that and decide,
Yeah, we have a virtual tool where you can actually dive in and look into all the different components of what's in the budget. So I think that actually happened a few years ago. We just wanted it to be more interactive where people could really see
Yeah.
what was in there.
Yeah.
As
on our
well as
website.
also the copy of the budget book itself is also online.
I was reading this morning from the book of Jeremiah, actually. And Jeremiah was telling a group of people, pray for the prosperity and the welfare of the city you're in, because if that city benefits, you benefit.
Yeah.
And that's an important thing, to pray for our cities, to pray for our city leaders, and to recognize that if that city prospers, the people living in the city prosper as well.
Exactly.
It's not one or the other, it's both.
Right.
Exactly. And we want our cities to prosper.
Yes.
Hickory, Catawba County,
Yes.
state of North Carolina, all of it. We
Yeah.
want to have a prosperous country. But it has to start somewhere, and it has to start locally a lot of the times. And,
Yep.
and that was the other piece I wanted to say is you have a lot of impact locally. We have boards and commissions that we have 13 or 14 boards and commissions that you can be involved in
Yeah.
as a citizen. And I know the other cities probably have some of those as well.
Yeah.
But if you like recycling, if you like public art, if you like business development, we have regional planning. So there's a spot for everybody. Youth council, you can get involved at a young age. And I encourage people to do that because we want citizen input. A government's not built for the government to run everything. It's built for citizens to give input and constructive input, good input, and healthy input that we all can, use to build the best cities to make them prosperous. Our bond projects that we had a 42-member bond commission. That's not easy.
Sure.
Having 42 different opinions
Yeah.
in a commission.
That would be a challenge.
It's
yeah.
a challenge, but it's a good challenge because they gave good insight and they helped us decide what projects to move forward with, and that was citizen-driven input. So if citizens are going to vote on a bond and say they want it, well, then we brought citizens in to tell us what they wanted. Granted, we have ultimate say, council has ultimate say on what moves forward, but it's great to have the citizens engaged because if not, you don't have that prosperity happening for everybody.
Yeah.
And I want people to know that they don't have to just sit back and watch at a distance. They can engage with cities, with their local leaders. They can come to meetings. They can watch them online. And then they can get involved in a board or commission. We're always looking for people for boards and commissions. So,
And generally, whenever there's a project in your area, so we were talking about this before too. So, like with our downtown, but also with like the aviation walk that goes near the airport, or Old Lenore Walk. When we do a project, we try to make sure that we reach out to the stakeholders that are in that area.
Yeah.
We do what's called stakeholder meetings, and we open those up to the public. We try to put that information out on our website just in case somebody isn't able to make it to a meeting. Generally now, especially with COVID, we had like an online forum where you could put in a comment, ask questions. If you didn't understand something, somebody would call you back. Because for us, it goes back to the communication piece. We want to make sure that people are fully aware as much to the extent as possible of what's going on, when it's happening, why it's happening, and just making sure that all those questions are answered. And I think that's really important because as a community leader, I think it's our job to make sure that people are aware of what's going on and what's available to them, the resources that are here, and to make sure that they're to the highest quality possible. So we try to do our best at handling that for sure.
sometimes we kind of joke, my team jokes that, do you wake up every morning and go to your city government's social media page and the website? We do, but you probably don't.
Right.
So how do we make it that you want that you want that information so that you don't feel left out of the loop? There are so many ways that we do communicate, whether it be a hard copy piece of paper in your water bill that comes to you in the mail, or an email that you can sign up for, or social media. There's just lots of avenues. Our website is a wealth of knowledge, so much information on that. If you dig in a little bit, you can find recruitment information, housing, neighborhoods, all kinds of other stuff other than just paying your water bill.
Sure.
A lot of people just go to your government website for planning, code, maybe police or fire, and to pay your water bill. And then some people look at libraries and parks. But we want people to see it's a two-way street. We're not just here to push out information all the time. We want people to try to want that information too.
Sure.
Again, I think in the United States in general, it's important to be engaged, to be knowledgeable about your government, about your local officials that you've elected, your mayors, your commissioners, all those people, but also just your day-to-day functions. If there's something you have a question about, you don't like, or you do like, we want to hear that. And we want you to be able to find that information easily. When we design our website, we sit back and look at, is this citizen friendly? Is this not just Dana friendly? Is like I can find it, but is a citizen going to look for it there? So we always try to think that way, and we use our wonderful resources that we have in our staff to make sure they're thinking that way with us when we look
Yeah.
at our sites and look at all the pieces that go out, and they'll give us corrective feedback if we need to change some things, which is great. And so it's a two-way street for communication.
Well, we do really appreciate what you guys are doing, because you're representing not just the city of Hickory, really representing the whole region in terms of what's taking place. And thank you so much
Thank you
Thank
for having
you.
us and doing this.
for sharing.
We appreciate that you're
and,
letting people know.
For opening yourself up. And we do pray and ask for God's gracious favor and blessing and prosperity in this region,
Yeah.
because we need His help.
Thank you.
Ultimately. Thank you so much. And thank those of you today who've spent some time with us just talking about city government on Midweek Talks. We'd ask you to share this, and we'll see you next time on Midweek Talks. And thank you so much for being here with us today.